Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other. Today's Being You is the fifth principle. We affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large.
Our opening words this morning are number 435. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Kathleen McTeague. The opening hymn is number 300.
With heart and mind and voice and hand, may we this time and place transcend to make our purpose understood. A mortal search for mortal good, a firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth, a mind that's free in age and youth, to choose a path no threat impedes, wherever light of conscience leads. Our martyrs died so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart whose search makes love the spirit of our church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside.
Our transitional words, number 461. Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime.
Therefore, we are saved by hope.
Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history.
Therefore, we are saved by faith.
Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone.
Therefore, we are saved by love.
No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own.
Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness.
Reinhold Niebuhr. At this point, I'm delighted to invite Bill Breeden up here. His title, Religion Really? We'll have to see this. Just an exploration of what religion means, or perhaps should mean.
I want to begin with a couple of readings. One from a very dear friend and founding member of the Bloomington Unitarian Universalist Church, who died a few years ago. Her name was Cookie Lynch, and in 2005, she wrote this for the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. My tears had all been shed. Enola Gay's cargo of withering death could not speak to me. I had cried for my young soldier husband, trapped in the Christmas snows of the Bulge, for the lads on the Normandy beaches, hurled like pebbles against the cliff-top cannon. I wept for the Iraq bodies of Baton's March, for sailors incinerated in the Pearl of the Pacific, for my captain father whose ship was sunk off Algiers. It is 1945. Whatever it takes, it must end. Ye gods of war, 400,000 Americans slain is enough. Do the Japanese wives and mothers weep for our dead? We know not what we do, but we are ready. We wives and mothers accept the unacceptable. Only later, in the fullness of time, came the hot tears, came the guilt, came the national shame, came understanding of the ultimate evil, the demon we had released upon the earth. Now empathy is so deep, but it fails to succor your Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We memorialize your tragedy. We pray for forgiveness, but can we know while human memory endures? Can we ever know the balm of absolution? And this writing from another person who was personally affected by the Hiroshima bombing. Brian Doyle, former editor of Portland Magazine, who died of a brain tumor not too many years ago. 1945. Here is my dad in Manila. He is 23 years old. He is a master sergeant. His task is to read photographs and maps and charts and interviews with local planters and residents in areas which the armies of the Alliance wish to liberate from the armies of the Empire of Japan. He works in the main building of Santa Ana racetrack and lives in a tent nearby. It is roaring hot. He is lonely. He was married a year ago. Their honeymoon was a day. He is sure he's going to die in the forthcoming invasion. His task is to inform invaders about the danger, both natural, like swift tide changes, hidden reefs, and unnatural, like mines and ammunition depots and gun placements. In August, an Army Air Corps pilot brings him the films from the reconnaissance flights over Hiroshima. My father examines the film closely and tells the pilot it's an error. The film is blank. There's zip where the city is supposed to be. Yes, sir, says the pilot. Maybe you're not hearing me here, Corporal, says my dad. This is useless. The film is empty. That is what we photographed over Hiroshima. Sir, says the captain, says the Air Corps man. That's what we photographed over Hiroshima. I am sure we are on target, sir. Positive. My dad, disgruntled, pores over the photos again. And slowly he says, a year later, I realized he was correct, and that the films were accurate, and Hiroshima was obliterated. Our dad has always chosen his words carefully, and he uses the word obliterated when he talks about that moment in the ancient bloody story of people. Another man might have made some hay out of the detail that he was the first man in history to see nothing where Hiroshima used to be. But not our dad. Our dad says that was a horrifying tragedy and it saved 1 million lives. He says it was a terrible thing that should never occur again. He says he sat there and realized that probably the battle was over and he could go home and thousands of people were roasted and 1 million more twisted for a generation. He says no one can count the people saved by the bombs and no one could justify the horror of them either. He says anyone who thinks he has something smart to say here is a smug fool. He says this sitting at the kitchen table next to the girl who waited for him to come back, even though they were both sure he would die in the invasion. 2 or 3 times a day. Sure, if you look 2 or 3 times a day, if you look carefully, you can see them holding hands. It's like some young part of them can't get over the fact that he made it home. So many others didn't. Ursula Le Guin wrote, if civilization has an opposite, it is war. Religion. Religion, the word comes from the Latin. It's related to ligament. Religion, religare, to bind again, to bind closely to what we need, what we are, to bind again. John Milton said, the mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. Stephen King said, when his life was ruined, his family killed. This is in Stephen King's book, Storm of the Century. When his life was ruined, his family killed, his farm destroyed. Job, in the Old Testament, knelt down on the ground and yelled up at the heavens, why, God, why me? And the thundering voice of God answered, there's just something about you that pisses me off. Religion needs a sense of humor. And George Carlin had probably the best sense of humor I've ever run into. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of the day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever until the end of time. But he loves you. He loves you. He needs your money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow, he just can't handle money. Carlin also said, religion is like a pair of shoes. Find one that fits for you, but don't make me wear your shoes. Mahatma Gandhi says it's easy enough to be friendly to one's friends, but to befriend the one who regards himself as your enemy is the quintessence of true religion. The other is mere business. Ursula Le Guin again said, to learn which questions are unanswerable and not to answer them. This skill is most needful in times of stress and darkness. Now, Ursula Le Guin, by the way, is probably the greatest theologian I think that has written in the last several centuries, although she was a science fiction author. And I highly recommend her writing, even though some of it, if you read her earlier books, The Dispossessed and some others, still uses the male terms most of the time. And she said later in her life that it was so hard to get published as a woman in science fiction that she had to write it that way, and she wished that she could have done otherwise. So I tend to change her words occasionally when I run into them, just because I think she would change them if she were still alive. Ursula Guin writes this: "It is our suffering that brings us together. It's not love. Love does not obey the mind and turns to hate when forced. The bond that binds us is beyond choice. We are brothers." I would change that. We are human beings. We are human beings in what we share. In pain, which each of us must suffer alone, in hunger, in poverty, in hope, we know our humanness. We know it because we have had to learn it. We know that there is no help for us but from another, that no hand will save us if we do not reach out our hand. And the hand that you reach out is empty, as is mine. You have nothing. You possess nothing. You own nothing. You are free. All that you are, all you have is what you are and what you give from the dispossessed. I've said it from this pulpit probably several times. I've come to recognize that I own nothing but the breath I just took. And the only thing that really matters is how I give it back. And we can give it back in anger or in hate, or we can give it back in love. And if we pay attention to that breath, we have to give it back. If we don't give it, we're gone. If we pay attention to how we give it back, it makes all the difference in how we live. That word, that Latin word I began with, the binding, religare, to bind again. Every time we breathe, we have the opportunity to bind again with our brothers and sisters. I want to talk about how religion is in these days. You have that slide for me? Last night, our internet, it's been a crazy week, really, to be honest with you. We thought we were going to fiber optic a month ago, and then a tornado happened at our place and tore everything they had put up down. And so they came back the next 2 weeks ago or so, and we're going to put it in again. But our land is a little different. When we put in our electricity in our land, after we drilled a well, we didn't have a house down where our cabin is now. We just had a little old trailer, and we had to put in electricity up in the middle of the driveway for our well. So when we built our cabin, then we had to put on a whole line from the meter to our house, which is a private line, which no one will mark for you. Well, you can actually hire people who will mark it for you, but it costs you about $400, and the only people I could contact put me on a waiting list 2 to 3 months down the road. So we decided to do it ourselves and got a machine, and we didn't know how to use the machine, and we found a line of some kind, I'm not sure what it was, an old telephone wire or something, and marked it down our driveway. And I called them and said, "It's lined, come hook us up to the World Wide Web," instead of running off of somebody's diesel in the valley. And so they showed up. I had the line marked. They cut the line, and I'd shut off all the power just in case. And when they left, I turned the power back on, and our cabin did not have power. So they'd cut the line. And fortunately, they were nice enough to come back and help me dig up about 14 feet of their line, trying to find where they cut it on our painted line. And I finally told them, I said, "This is not your problem, it's mine. You guys can go on home." And so we got the machine again, and my son figured out how to use it, and he found the break in the line, and we spent, what night was that, Glenda? Thursday night, working late into the night to get our electricity back on. So it's been a crazy week, and it's wonderful to have it back on, especially in the heat. The other thing that's happening is I had to go to my pre-surgery conference with a doctor. I'll be having back surgery on Wednesday, and I hope to be here in September, but it's yet to be seen whether that will happen. I did have the good news that the doctor I was meeting said that I was the fittest person he had ever seen going for back surgery, so he thought it'd be a breeze, and we hope it is. But I went into into Spencer last night to use the internet for a little bit, and at a Juniper studio there, And it happened to be the day they were having a big Christian music festival on the square. This is in response to the Pride Festival that has been the biggest festival in Spencer for many years, and it was kicked off the courthouse by the Republican town council and off the courthouse lawn, and has had to change a lot. So they decided to have a Christian music conference, and I have to tell you, there wasn't very many people there, which I'm kind of proud of. But this sign, I had to go out and take a picture of it. It says, "Proud American Christian." Proud American Christian. This is a heresy theologically, to take a fish and put a flag on it, a fish that stood for the early church. Remember, I told you before that the early church, the symbol of the church up until 315 AD was the fish, because they fed people, because they believed in feeding people, they believed in helping people, they believed all people were in community, and there was no orthodoxy. It was a matter of feeding the poor, sharing what they had. And so they take this fish and they put another ridiculous desecration of the flag. It's in the flag code somewhere that you're not, Kid Rock is not supposed to wear underwear with a flag on it. It's disrespectful to the flag. And I can think of no greater disrespect to either the flag or the Christian faith than to link the word proud. Doesn't the Bible say pride cometh before a fall? Doesn't the Bible say love is not proud? It is not arrogant? All the way through the Bible, you see the condemnation of pride and how it is not a part of the Christian faith. And yet it has become so linked with the flag. I was a little stunned by the fact that that was right out the window where I was working. I wanted, and I've said this before many times, I don't say that I'm proud to be an American. I haven't said that for years. I'm very thankful to be an American. I'm very fortunate to be American. I was born in a country, in a wonderful family, and I've never been hungry in my life except when I was intentionally fasting. So I'm very thankful that I'm an American. But 1945, August 6th and August 9th are just two examples of why I cannot be proud. And I got a call on the phone yesterday from a woman whose father also was saved by that invasion. And indeed, anybody that says smug words about those 2 days, those bombings, as Brian Doyle's said, anybody who says that is a fool. But the fact is, Le Guin said that if there is an opposite to civilization, it is war. And we sometimes think that we won that war. We are told that we won that war. No one wins in war. No one wins. Everyone loses in war. And we need to understand that. And we need to get back to a religion, a religious understanding that binds us to our common humanity, that becomes the ligature, the ligaments that holds us together as community, as a people. Not hate, but love. I'm thinking about the fact that there's a big uproar in the nation now about critical race theory. And I have to be honest with you, I wish they hadn't called it that. I wish they'd just called it U.S. history, because that's what it is. It's purely, simply U.S. history. It was not, and it is not what I was taught. I was not taught that within 3 or 6 miles of where we sit this morning, a black man was taken from the jail in Vigo County, is hanged on the banks of the Wabash River, his body burned and desecrated and mutilated. I was not taught things like that happen in Indiana. I thought that was all South, and I wasn't even taught much about that. Critical race theory is simply U.S. history. And I wish they would get rid of the critical. It's not a theory. It's what was. And if we do not know what was, we cannot know what is today. And our children cannot know. Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He did not say you shall know the propaganda, and the propaganda shall make you proud. It's the truth that sets people free. Proud American Christian. a desecration of both America and Christianity. I also want to be clear about my belief about the Christian religion. I claim to be a Christian for the better part of my life. I don't know when I quit that. I don't identify as Christian anymore because of what it means in America. But I have great respect for those who practice Christian faith as it was practiced in the first 3 centuries. It was a community of believers. It was a community that loved one another. It was a community that stood against empire. And I have been in jails and prison in this country with many firm, born-again, believing Christians. And I've respected them greatly as we resisted in civil disobedience, war, and empire. So true Christianity has nothing to do in believing 7 impossible things before breakfast. True Christianity was never built upon the idea that you were going to be saved and go to heaven. That's not what that's not what the Christians believed in the first 3 centuries. First 3 centuries saw Christians acting out the Sermon on the Mount in terms of loving your enemies, in terms of forgiveness, in terms of sharing our resources, in terms of being a community. That's what religion is. I'd like to think that we can get back to that. In The Left Hand of Darkness, Ursula Le Guin writes, I don't mean love when I say patriotism, I mean fear, the fear of the other, and its expressions are political and poetical. Hate, rivalry, aggression. That's what this represents. This represents this use of the fish and the flag, or the picture you saw earlier, represents a religion that says gays are not welcome. A religion that accepts racism, white superiority, and American exceptionalism. And we are exceptional. We're the only nation in the world that has ever dropped atomic bombs on cities. That's an exception. We're the richest nation in the world. That's an exception. We're exceptional in a lot of ways. And believe me, that some people think we're exceptional in that we give more to the poor and more to other countries than any other country. That's simply not true. We're way down on the list in foreign aid in terms of the first world countries, in terms of the percentage of gross national product, which is how you have to measure it. Way down on the list. And in fact, every dollar we send overseas in foreign aid, we get, U.S. corporations get about 90 cents back of those dollars. So it's kind of a feel-good kind of situation, but it's also economically good for us. I believe we can be exceptional in building communities. In Little Spencer, Indiana, we had for several years the largest pride event in the state. And it's the only little town of under 10,000 people with a pride center on the square, and it's still there. We can be exceptional even in Owen County. We can be exceptional in the United States of America. We can be exceptional as you use with our principles. We're pretty special there. There's not many, we don't have a dogma that you have to believe. We have these statements that you affirm, these affirmations. And that's all you have to do to be a Unitarian, Universalist. You affirm these affirmations. Ursula Le Guin says, do you see how an act is not, as young men think, like a rock that one picks up and throws and a hit or misses and that's the end of it? When that rock is lifted, the earth is lighter. The hand that bears it is heavier. When it is thrown, the circuits of the stars respond, and where it strikes or falls, the universe is changed. On every act, the balance of the whole depends. The winds and seas, the powers of water and earth and light, all that these do and all that the beast and green things do is well done and rightly done. All these act within the equilibrium. From the hurricane and the great whale sounding to the fall of a dry leaf and the gnat's flight, all they do is done within the balance of the whole. But we, insofar as we have power over the world and over one another, we must learn to do what the leaf and the whale and the wind do on their own nature. We must learn to keep the balance. Having intelligence, we must not act in ignorance. Having choice, we must not act without responsibility. That's what religion means. Ligaments in our body keep the balance. I happen to know about ligaments and tendons and things like that because I cut one time in my hand, and now I can't play the guitar near as I would never was a Jimi Hendrix, but now I'm not even a Bill Breeden on the guitar because this finger's out of balance. It doesn't work as well. Religion should be a force in our lives that keeps us balanced, keeps us bound to what is important to us, bound to our ethics. And when it gets out of bounds, it turns to hate and chaos. I think that the world would probably be better off without religions. We'd probably be better just to see ourselves as human beings. And I think God, if there is such a being, would be more pleased with that. For surely if God created humans, he would rather us be human than inhuman. And so often, religion becomes inhuman. When it becomes rigid, when the ligaments break that bind us together, it becomes war. So I say these days, I'm not very religious, and I certainly don't claim to be anything. I'm a Universalist, basically, and that's about as far as I can go. Even more so, I say I'm a human being. And I think that if we focus every day of our lives and every breath we take on being human beings together, we'll be better off than if we cite any religious text. Blessed be. Join us in singing our closing hymn. That's the one I sent you, is 168. One more step. That's right.
One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone. We'll take one more step, one more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word, one more prayer. We will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
83 is our closing words. Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual, works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. Benediction.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace, know that you are loved and that your life is sacred.